Craig O'Shaughnessy, welcome to the ITA College Tennis Coaches Podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Currently in New York in the media room. Lots of analytics around, and it's great to talk to you.
It certainly is. I think you're the first celebrity I've interviewed on this podcast. I'm very honored and quite nervous as well.
You'll get over it very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, there's so much we can talk about. I wish we could probably do several more of these podcasts, but I'm going to touch upon a few things today that you've been quite known for in the past, some of the work that you've done over the last few decades, and then also now what you're doing in the college space. So lots to get to. So my first question, Craig, is I believe you made the first four shots of the game famous. I mean, you hear commentators now talking about it during the US Open, all the tournaments that are out there. They talk about the importance of the first four shots. But you're I believe the individual that made that famous, and all the work that you've done on the analytics. But then I feel like some coaches took it so literally. I'd hear about like beginner coaches with kids who couldn't even hit a red ball, and they'd be going, "We're only focusing on the first four shots," or
Right.
have coaches who would design their whole practices around it, even though they might have players with some limitations. So can you kind of give some context, clear that up, and kind of
Yeah.
how you'd like college coaches in specific to implement the first four shots into their practices?
Yeah. Good point. So I'm looking. Well, you can see it right there, right behind. In fact, 1 second. Going to click on a match.
This is
So you
making
can
for really
see.
good audio
Yeah.
podcast there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There we go. Right there. Okay. So what you see in the background is the match analytics here at the US Open. It's the same company that does it at all four slams. So in 2015, I'm at the Australian Open. I'm looking at that, uh, analytic from a match, and about three-quarters of the way down, after you've got serving, returning, rallying data, for the first time, it said 0 through 4 shots, 5 through 8, and 9 plus. And 0 through 4, the match winner may have been 65, the match loser may have been 53. And I looked at it, I'm like, what in the world is this? I've never seen it. Even before 2015, I was still very heavily involved in analytics simply because I looked at all facets of the game, whether it's technique, whether it's speed, whether it's agility, whether it's diet, whether it's schedule, all these things that make up, that are components of a player's career. And I gravitated towards strategy because I thought that, one of the sayings I have is it more important to hit the ball where you want to hit it, or more important to hit it where the opponent doesn't want it? And I grew up as a little, I'm going to go for all these little walks into the park of all these side stories. And here's my first one. So I grew up in Albury, Australia, 25 grass courts in the summer. No coaching. There was no coaching. We just played sets. That's all we did. So I would, after school on the weekend, I'd go down to the 25 courts. You'd play with anybody who was there. We played a ton with adults, the pennant teams playing on a Saturday afternoon, singles and doubles. It was a really big deal. So my kind of background in that area was, I wish I had a better topspin backhand. Really didn't need it on the grass that stay low, but I wish I had it. My serve was okay. Forehand, not bad. Volleys, not pretty good. But because I had limitations with my game, particularly with my technique, I had to figure out another way to say, okay, how do I win this match? And from playing so many sets, kids today, it's Tuesday afternoon, middle of summer, they'll go and do their 2 hours of academy work. There'll be 4 on a court or 6 on a court. And, I've done that as well. I've run academies at different places around the world, and I get that. But it just wasn't how I grew up. I grew up saying, okay, we go to the court. A lot of times we never even warmed up. We just said, let's just play, let's go. So I would get 4, 5, sometimes 6 sets a night in, 5 nights a week, and then on the weekend. So, I would be playing 30 sets a week. If you think of today's juniors now that are 13, 14, they may not play 1 set a week. They might only playing, drills in the academy setting. So I was able to figure out how to beat better players by figuring out their weaknesses and get it there. And get it there with some average shots, but I get it there. And
Mhm.
so we'd walk off the court. I was like, well, Craig, that player's better than you. What was the score? And I'm like, well, I won 8-5. What'd you do? It's like, well, their backhand breaks down. You know, the first couple of shots are okay, but the third and fourth shot, it breaks down a lot. So I would always be talking about the opponent. Whereas I noticed a lot of my other friends in junior tennis, they would talk about themselves a lot. What happened in the match? Well, I didn't hit my serve that well, or maybe my forehand was on, but it would be very centered on them, not centered on the opponent. And I just had to do it that way. I had no other option. So I think that helped me later on in life to um, to coach players because the opponent was more important to me. So let's now circle back to this to 0 through 4. So when I saw this rally length at the Australian Open in 2015, I didn't know what it meant. I went to IBM. I said, "Can you please explain it? Well, what in the hell is it for?" They're like, "Well, we have it sitting here. We have rally length sitting here. We record it, but we don't do anything with it. So we thought we'd just cut it up into these categories." I'm like, "Well, how do you have a rally length of 0?" Well, that's and the heading. Let's see if the heading's still exactly the same right now. I'm going to look right in front of me. I'm going to draws. I'm going to stats. Um, yeah, here we go. So it says, I'm looking at it right now. It says rallies of 0 to 4 shots. Well, the shot is the ball hitting the strings. So I said, how can you have a 0 shot rally? They're like, well, Craig, that's a double fault. And I'm like, well, there was one shot hit. The serve was hit. And they're
Mhm.
like, no, Craig, rally length is predicated on the ball hitting the court, not hitting the strings. And I'm like, well, what does that heading say? And I'm looking at it here and they haven't changed it. So it was very confusing at the beginning, but rally length again is predicated on the ball hitting the court. So, when you have a 4 shot rally, there's 4 balls that landed in the court. And this was 2015. And this is actually the first tournament, 2024 US Open, that 2024 US, sorry, there's two guys just having a whale of a conversation right beside me. Thankfully, they've just moved on. So this is the first tournament that they have included rally length for every match. From all the other tournaments that I go to, it's only on the major show courts, maybe 5 or 6 courts. But you'll get 80 to 90 matches there, and it's not complete data. It gives you a really good idea, but it's not complete. But this is the first tournament that I saw it. So when I saw that, so I went into my spreadsheet, I put in 80 or 90 matches, and at the end of it, I'm like, okay, well, what's the result here? And I saw that 70% of all points were in 0 through 4, 20% in 5 through 8, and 10% in 9+. The 2024 US Open is identical for the men. Right now, it's 70-20-10. And it took me a day or two to go, what is this? I
Mhm.
didn't know what to make of it. So I asked my friends, I asked other coaches, I asked players, what do you think about this? And after a couple of days, it kind of cemented it in my mind. Two major things. The first is I had no idea that we played so many short rallies. And a 0 through 4 rally is each player only hits the ball a maximum into the court twice in that rally. So it's either a 0, a double fault, or it's 1 or it's 2. 0, 1, or 2 is 7 points out of 10. So that really was amazing to me that we played that many short points. And secondly, I looked to the longer rallies and they were 10%. And then I kind of reflected back to our practice court and certainly to lessons, the private lesson all over the world. 90% of that time is about consistency and shot tolerance and repetition and patience and grinding. And if we're doing it in Spain, it's about suffering as well. So I look at it and it's like, wow, the first 4 shots is the serve, the return, serve +1 and return +1. We tend to push that to the end of practice.
Mhm.
If at all, we practice those elements. And I'm like, the start of the point is pushed to the end of practice. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. And if we have 90% of our practice court about consistency, and it's really the long rallies are only 10%. So I come up with the phrases. The first thing I thought was like, well, our practice court is broken. We cannot. Our practice court must be a reflection of what's actually happening in a match. So that's, I think, where things got a little crazy. And just I've got to say this: I own a ball machine. I'm a coach. I get on call with players. A ball machine is meant for one thing and one thing only: is massive repetition. So I'm not against that at all, especially when you're developing strokes. You must hit thousands and thousands of forehands and thousands of backhands. You must, and serves as well. But we can't push the serve to the end of practice. We can't push the return to end of practice. It's so important. And it kind of helps explain, you get a player, it's like, wow, this player is really good in practice. They don't do so well in matches. And you look at it, it's like, well, they're really good in long rallies, which is what they do. They churn out a lot of hitting in the practice lessons, but they can't reach the promised land of the long rally because the serve's not good enough, the return's not good enough, the serve plus one forehand has no defense to it, return plus one, you have no running backhand in the ad court, so they can't get to the long rally and they just falter in the short rallies. So I think what happened with coaches when they first saw this, and I'll take credit for the problem, actually credit in a bad way. I probably didn't explain it well enough. And part of that is because I probably didn't understand it well enough. So in today's game, what you're trying to do is to survive the first four shots in many ways. So the point starts four different ways. Where your first serve, your second serve, the first serve return and the second serve return. So if you're hitting a first serve, you're trying to end the point quickly. Those points will be, you want return errors, you want short balls, and you want three-shot rallies where your forehand dominates in a serve plus one setting, or you go straight to the net and you pressure at the front of the court. Second serve, I'm going to look at it right now. What do you think? I got men win percentage behind second serves. US Open right now, we're halfway through the fourth round. What do you think it is? Dave Mullins on the spot.
51%.
50. It's 49. It's underwater for the ladies. Let's go to the ladies. Men, it's 49. The ladies is, if this will work, I've got to go out of it. Here we go. Women's singles, tournament totals, 46%. So when you're hitting second serves, you're underwater, immediately underwater. So you've got to survive that. You've got to, and a lot of times the serve is weak, the return is strong, and the serve plus one error is just flow. So it's difficult when you're returning first serves. Let's just go back to the guys for a second. This is the other thing, is that this system just freezes up a little bit, which drives me up the wall. Okay, let's go here. Men's singles tournament totals. Okay, they're only winning first serve return, first serve points won is 72, so it's 28%. So you're not winning, you're winning 3 out of 10 if you're lucky behind a first serve. So you're definitely on defense there. But if you can do better against second serve. So this is what I learned coaching Novak. Novak's going to win 75% of his first serve points. He's going to win 57% of his second serve points. He's going to win 57% of the opponent's second serve. And then he's only going to win about 28 to 30% of their first serve. So in many ways, when the point starts with the first serve, it doesn't have that big of a bearing on the final outcome of the match, because it's difficult to make hay against someone's first serve. But as soon as the first serve's missed, game on.
Yeah.
Game on. And if you can win even slightly more than 50% of your second serve and more than 50% of the opponent's second serve, you are loving life. You are progressing deep into the tournament. So I'll take a breath and let you ask the question. But
that's the whole podcast done.
but that's kind of what it's about right there.
Yeah. No. Okay. That helps. Craig, is there other? I mean, you've put out so much content all across the world, on so many aspects of the game. Is there anything else out there that you feel like has been misinterpreted or maybe implemented in the wrong way? Can you think of anything else that maybe, I don't know, have people criticized your work in any way that you're like, huh, I need to explain that a little bit more? Or is the
Yeah,
first shots kind of the only thing
yeah, I
that?
like that. Um, it does. It's kind of like consistency versus first strike. That's really what it's all about in all forms and fashions.
Mhm.
So, I've had coaches come and say, Craig, you don't believe in consistency. It's just the first four shots and nothing else. It's like not true. Absolutely not true. First of all, we do have long rallies, so we kind of need to prepare for that. But the old way of preparing for long rallies was going to the practice court and hitting, let's hit 100 balls cross court to start with. And it's like, you go and do that on your court, and
Mm,
I'll go to my court and do a little of that. I'll do a little of that. So what I'm going to do in a warm up is this: I'm going to put the 10 and underline halfway between the service line and the baseline.
yeah.
I'm going to have one player down there, um, aiming past that line. And I don't know why I picked 40, but I like to say, okay, I want 40 balls deep to start our practice.
Hmm.
So the player is getting the consistency they crave. I'm getting the depth that I know that matters at
Hmm.
the start, and they're establishing their depth. So, once a point starts and we got nerves, the ball naturally goes a little shorter. We're a little bit tighter. The ball's coming a little bit more difficult, and I hit the ball naturally a little shorter. So, I want you to work on depth to start it. Get your ball high, get it away from the net, get the ball deep, establish that first, and get better at that. But it's not about going out there and just hitting balls cross court, which it used to be. It's about segmenting specific patterns of play and practicing those patterns, practicing those either 2 or 3 shot patterns. The 2-1 pattern to go deep through the ad court to position C, and then out wide through the ad court to position D, and then you've opened up the hole to position A. So then the analytics teach us to work on patterns, to be much more pattern based. The analytics show us that if you can work on serve location, so I have 4 locations in each service box. A lot of times I'm starting off practice, out wide is position 1, body 4 ends 2, body back ends 3, down the tees 4, all the way across to 8. So a lot of times I will go, okay, I put the lines out to segment those 8 locations, and I start with second serves. I'm like, you have to make a second serve to 1 in order to progress to 2, to progress to 3, to progress to 4. So I have them go 1 through 8, and then 8 through 1 with second serves. Then I'll have them go 1 through 8 and 8 through 1 with first serves. What a great way to develop serving. At the same time, yes, we're working a little on technique. Yes, we're working on height, but having the player have a small target that they increasingly get more confidence in is a phenomenal way to work on serve location and to work on serves overall. Another one I like to do is measure 2 racket lengths in from the service line and have them hit 20 second serves in that deep location in the juice court, and 20 second serves as a deep location in the ad court. I tend to do more second serve work than first serve work because the analytics tell me that if you can get your players to 50%,
Yeah.
they're going to have a great chance of winning the match.
Okay.
So it's far less about just rallying, just pointless, mindless rallying. That has almost no place on my practice court. We'll do rallying with patterns. We'll do rallying with depth. We'll do rallying with cross court defense. We'll do rallying deep to C to push the opponent back, but it's got a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And then, Craig, I mean, you talked about you growing up and we're of a similar generation. We didn't get to see ourselves play on video and things like that. And so when, can you maybe give an example? Because I know we have a lot of coaches who don't have the resources, they don't have cameras. Maybe they're thinking of investing in a camera and be able to show their players, things that they've been trying to tell them verbally, but a lot of players want to see it visually and understand it. But do you have any examples of players that you worked with where you were able to identify what was happening in their game and sit them down, show them video, and almost immediately they see much improved results because of one or two things that you've tweaked via kind of the video, um, presentation you're able to provide them.
Yeah, you said at the start of that coaches may not have a camera or a camcorder is what we had. Every coach has got one of these.
Yep.
Every coach has a camera in their pocket. So I'll give you an example. I worked with Alexei Poprin pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3 third rounds at 2 at the US Open, 1 at the Australian Open, I believe. And then COVID happened. Then we connected again, and I connected back as his full-time coach after COVID. So we go and do, at the end of 2020, we're going to a pre-season in Marbella and Dubai. I went to, in November, I go to Italy to the working with the Italian Federation at the Next Gen and ATP finals. I took my son with me on that trip, and then we actually went for, which I'm saying this because coaches should do this all the time. We took a couple of days off. We went to Cervinia in northern Italy at the base of the Matterhorn. We had 3 days of skiing. And I only mention this as a little side note. Coaches and players go, even here in New York, they go from the city to the courts, to the city to the courts, to the hotel room to the courts, and they do nothing else. And there are so many things to see in New York. There's so many things to see in Italy. And the more you can get away from the site, the more that you can expand the player's mind and go and see historical things and go to nice restaurants. It just helps. It helps break the monotony of a tennis player's life, just going hotel room to the courts. Anyway, I digress. So I go and work with Alexei. We've got his agent is there, his physio is there, his fitness guy is there, mom and dad's there, the brothers there, the sisters. We got a team. We got a team. So, the first night we sit down and it's like, okay, Alexei, the agent is basically going, I'm really interested to see how you're going to organize practice for these 2 weeks in Marbella and then also going on to Dubai. And so I said, well, it's really simple. We're going to figure out the analytics of Alexei's matches. We're going to let that drive our practice court. So I said, Alexei, let's look at serving. So at the time, he was around 75 in the world. So we look at his serving analytics, and he's just when you go to the ATP website and you go, okay, serving, which is first serve in, first serve one, second serve one, break point saved, amount of aces and fewer double faults. So they put all that into an algorithm, and he's up to about, I think he was 23 in the world as a server. So I'm like, listen, if our ranking is 75, but we're the 23rd best server, we're good. We need to get better, but we're good there. So the rankings go down to about 103. I think you had to play a certain amount of tournaments. Maybe you've got to play 10 tournaments to be registered on these lists. So we go down and look at the returning list, and I go right to the very end. The worst returner was Riley Opelka, serve bot. The next worst returner was John Isner, serve bot. The next worst returner was Kevin Anderson, serve bot. The next worst returner was Alexei Poprin. So I don't consider Alexei a serve bot because he's got game. He's got forehands and backhands. He's got net play. But essentially, if you just, take the serve bots and put them aside, Alexei was the worst returner in the top 100. And I'm like, this is what we're going to do. We have to get better here. We can take you to become the 10th best server in the world, 25 to 10. It's not going to do much difference. You are deficient returning. So for 1 week, Monday through Sunday, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, the only thing we did was return. Now, what was really important was I took my iPhone, I went and bought a $20 tripod, and I recorded everything, every moment, every interview. I would interview Alexei. He's like, okay, Alexei, we've got the targets down in the middle. We're going deep to B and C. We're doing 20 deep returns off the forehand wing. The coach is doing it nice and easy. We're starting out. What are you thinking about? It's like, well, I'm doing my step. I'm doing my split. I've got a short backswing. He's doing shadow swings with all this. He's talking me through it, and then we do it. I've got the camera right behind him, and we get in this. And then in the evenings, we go back and watch it. And, anytime he does something amazing, we put our hand up so that we can, if we're scrubbing through it quickly, we see the hand go up and we're like, oh, we need to watch that. That's something we need to look. But we would do 2 hours morning, 2 hours evening. It doesn't produce 2 hours of video. It probably produces an hour and 10 of video because you stop, you pause it. But you go through it and you remember times that it's doing well. So we did that I never let him hit a ground stroke for a week. Not one ground stroke. Return is not a ground stroke. So we did returns. Then the second week, we probably split half the time between returning and then we worked in serving and net play and so forth. And then we went to Dubai. We started doing practice sets, but we still did a lot of returning. So Alexei played last night here at the US Open. And beat Novak in the last round.
Sure.
He's returning great. He's returning phenomenal. I had him in a period where he was the world's worst returner, and we had to lock down on that. And it takes time. And it's a real good lesson for me to, as I'm coaching Alexei back, it's like, first I was like, how can he be this bad at returning? And then, it took time to mature. It took time for him to absorb it. We changed the racket. He was using the Head Prestige. I used the Head Prestige for 15 years. I thought it was the greatest racket ever. But he was flying his forehand, particularly forehand returns, and the backhand was dragging and going in the net. So I'm like, Alexei, you would really benefit from a change of rackets to a bigger head size, to something that, is you're not pulling around the court. So he had to get used to a new racket. He had to let all of this work on the return sink in. And a year and a half, 2 years later, it's coming to fruition. So he's, the racket head speed is there. The shape on the forehand is there. The forehand stays in more. The backhand he's hitting. The racket head is good. And the return's amazing. He's returning really well. So from a coaching standpoint, I learned that, and I tell parents this especially, we're working on this now. Yes, we want improvement today. Yes, we want to be better in a month. But sometimes things take a year. Sometimes they take a year and a half. Or even longer. So that was very important for me to understand. But it goes back to you saying, does the coach have the camera? Every coach has a camera. Go and buy a tripod and put it on there. You don't need to hang it on the back and record everything. And then I have a channel on YouTube. You put it on there as an unlisted video. So I use AirDrop from my camera to the computer. I then use iMovie to make the movie. As soon as it's done, I upload it to my YouTube channel. No one can see it because it's unlisted.
Yeah.
If you are not doing that today, it's only because you haven't quite figured it out. I'm telling you, it's the simplest thing in the world. I please do it, because you will get so much more out of it, out of developing your player.
Yeah. Okay. So over the weekend, I feel like every second or third player I watched had an Italian flag beside them. Yeah, and there you go. You've got
Federation of Italian Tennis and Paddle right there.
Yeah, we see those tracksuits everywhere now as well. But can you share with us what your role with the Italian Federation has been for the last few years, and what can college coaches take away from, I guess, their culture of excellence as it relates to high performance tennis? Is there anything that our college coaches can start adapting or adopting or learning from the Italians that would improve their programs?
So I started with them 2015, I think. Before, but when they've gone along their whole life, they've been an okay country for tennis. They've been okay. And I got there in 2015, and the culture was it was it was the same. But what they did, the reason I started in 2015 was they basically said, okay, this was their vision. They said, enough's enough. We've tried, we're getting nowhere. We want to be, if you said in 2015 Italian tennis is going to be, in 9 years time, is going to be the premier federation in the world, you're like, there's just, how does that happen? That's not possible. There's just no pathway forward. So the first thing they did is they cut tennis up into a pie. So there's strategy, there's fitness, there's speed, there's just your schedule, how many tournaments we're playing. And they looked at it and it's like, okay, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go out into the world, find people from outside Italy that are specialists in these areas and employ them for 2 years as a consultant for 2 years. And those that we like, such as Craig, we keep them going. Um, so there was, I saw all these specialists in these areas, and the Italians absorbed it.
Hmm.
So I remember being in, so in 2017, as I'm working with Novak, things are starting to pick up a little bit. And they come to me and I share with them. I show them like, this is the work that I'm doing, because they've never seen analytical work. They have no structure, no history of that. So they see what I'm doing with Novak. And Umberto Riano, who's the head of men's tennis, comes to me at the next gen and goes, Craig, I know you're working with Novak. It's an exclusive deal. I get it. No problem. But we've got this guy who's about 80 in the world right now, and we think he's going to be good. Can you, is there any way that we can take kind of this, what you're doing with Novak, and bring it over? So, I say to Novak, as he knows, I work with the Italian Federation. They want me to work with this one player who's 80 in the world. And the deal is, again, I can't work with anyone that's top 5, top 10, top 20. I can't do it. It's too close to Novak. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, Craig, no problem. It's like, it was almost like, of course you can. Guys, 80 is not a threat to me. It's fine. That guy finished the season 8 in the world, Matteo Berrettini, simply because we created structure around him. I remember being in Rome in 2018. He's like, I've got to play Lucas Pouille. I've never played him. I have no idea how to play him. I'm like, surely your coaches have written notes about Pouille before. And it's like, we have nothing. So I'm like, well, I've got all this stuff from Novak, and here's how you play Lucas Pouille. Essentially, you just rush the forehand. So he beats him. He plays Zverev on center court. He beats him. He's in the semifinals here of the U.S. Open in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that kind of the first lesson from the Italian culture is for college coaches is reach out to the specialists in the world, in the US or in the world, whether it's fitness, whether it's strategy. I'll put my hand up here. It's like I love working with college coaches, and we can chat about it later. I've got a new way to reach out to them and be an asset for the college programs. But first of all, have an open mind and look to learn from all the specialists in those areas. That's a really big deal. Create a sense of family is a really big deal, which I think college tennis does a really good job at. It's so obvious that unless you've won 2 junior Grand Slams, college tennis is a very viable pathway, a lot for Italian tennis, but all around the world. And I think more so now than ever, coaches and federations are very open to that. I think there's still, I still hear a little bit as like, well, I'm either going to go college or pro. It's always, I'm going to go to college and pro. So I think, you can really sell yourself as a program, as a stepping stone to the pro tour. Players are way older than they were. It's tougher to make it at 18, 19, 20. You get spit out, chewed up and spit out, far easier than in the past. So, embrace specialists and use them, whether it's just even reading, whether it's looking for culture. Those are things that really matter.
Okay. And are there any statistics related to the college game? You've watched a ton of college tennis by now, but when you're watching the college game, are there things that you believe college coaches are overlooking or maybe ignoring or maybe just not aware of, that you're up there in the stands and you're watching, God, if this player or these players or these teams would just focus a little bit more on this, they would be so much better. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, yeah, exactly. I did a course called A Million Points of College Tennis, and it covers a lot of different parts of college tennis. But I'm going to give you one. Instead of like giving you a bunch and we forget them, here's one, and it's all about the net. So out of these matches, I did it with Warren Pretorius from Tennis Analytics. We partnered on this. So Warren works a lot with college programs. We got the data. We took out the schools. We just got raw data aggregated. So if you are, and let's talk men's tennis first, then we'll talk women's tennis. So I'm looking at the data right now. So overall, and actually let's go net points one for the men. So I'm looking right above US Open right now. Halfway through the 4th round. So we've got 60, 96, 106, 112. We've got 116 of 127 matches. So the data's not going to change. The men are winning 65% at net.
Hmm.
In college tennis, they're winning 62%. It's phenomenal. 62% is phenomenal. Anything you get above 50-50 is outrageously good. So, but here's where it gets better. So, first of all, going to the net in college tennis is a good idea. It's a really good idea. 62% is great. So now we segment the data into match winner versus match loser. The match winners are actually winning 67% at net. So, as we talked about earlier, you're lucky if you win 1 out of 2 from the baseline. So if you stay back, you say, well, I might win 1 out of 2, but if I go to the net, I can win 2 out of 3.
Hmm.
Here's one last thing that even makes the net better. Match losers are still winning 58% at net. So once again, anything that you can do to tip any analytical point above 50% is great. Match losers are still winning 58%. So you must go to the net in college tennis. Here's the ladies' numbers. Remember, the
Craig,
men are
can I,
winning
can I
six.
just can I ask a clarifying
Please,
question there? So how do you define that? Is that they would have had to at least hit one volley, half volley,
no,
overhead? Is it determined on their
no.
position of the court? How is it defined?
Yeah, it's the easiest way to do it. And Warren and I went back and looked at it and said, is this a volley? Is this a net point? Is this not a net point? First of all, they absolutely do not have to hit a volley or an overhead in order for it to be classified as a net point. It is simply when you watch the player, they move forward into the court
Mm-hmm.
with the goal. They don't know, like they've hit a shot and they move forward into the court and say, I'm continuing to the net to play. We haven't even seen the opponent hit the shot yet
Hmm.
from the other side. So we don't know whether the opponent shot's going to be in or out. And we don't know if we're going to have to hit a ball or not. We don't know.
Yeah.
But we look at the intent of the player and says they are now moving forward with
Mhm.
the intention to finish the point at the net. And they may not even reach the service line, but
Okay.
they've all of a sudden started in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think, if we look at 100 points as from a college perspective, or even just an approach perspective, I think we're going to agree on 99 of them. It's like, that's a net point.
Yeah.
That person is going forward.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
Okay. The
So,
women.
so let's just go back and I'll finish this off.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Okay.
The
So the
women. Yeah.
men, the men are winning 62%. The women are winning 61. Pretty good.
Mm.
Um, the match winners for the men are winning 67. Match winners for the ladies are winning 66. Match losers for the men are winning 58. Match losers for the women are winning 56%. So just in those raw numbers, going to the net, one of the things that I'm sure college coaches know that I beat the drum. The net is a wonderful place to be. It's a phenomenal place to be. You're going to be winning 2 out of 3 up there. The problem with the net versus the baseline. If you lose a point at the baseline, it doesn't feel good, but it's almost like a little mosquito just gave you a little bite. It's like, oh, I feel it, but you kind of wipe it off and it's still there. I'm still a little upset about it, but it's not too bad. It's a
Hmm.
mosquito bite. You lose a point at the net, it feels like a hornet has come and stung you in the neck. And it's like, oh my God, I went to the net. I'm supposed to win all the points up there. I didn't lose that. So I'm not going to go to the net anymore.
Yeah.
It stings more. And we need to teach our players that you're going to go to the net, you're going to lose a point. It's only going to sting like a mosquito. We need to change that mentality that, it's fine. It's 2 out of 3. We have the data. It's a great thing to do.
Mm.
And one of the big things is the college coaches are thinking right now is like, yeah, okay, that's fine, Craig. I get it. But my kids can't volley. I mean, their volley technique's awful. Over half the time you go to the net at all levels of the sport, you don't have to hit a volley and you'll still win a point.
Yeah.
Don't have to hit a volley. So I'll still take my chances up there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was one of the things that was when I was at the NCAA Division One Championships in May in Stillwater. That was one of the things that really stood out to me watching the women's game was their willingness to come forward, even when they had lost a point at the net, a short time ago, but also their willingness to do it under pressure when on a deuce point, on a set point, deep in the third set. I was so impressed with that, and so that message is going through, Craig, for sure, at least at the top of Division One, because
Yeah.
that stood out to me more than anything else I watched at the NCAA championships this year. So it's happening. It's just, is it trickling down, to that next level? So
I
yeah.
agree completely. There's so many ways that whether I'm writing for the ATP, on a story on the final here, whether I'm on my blog, writing for Tennis Head magazine, delivering this information, particularly at Wimbledon. Um, there's a lot of ways that I just, I'm throwing this information out there. The number one thing that is so important to me is coach education, because each coach is going to have 100 juniors that they're influencing, that they're passing that information, that they're organizing the drills. And if the coaches can have the correct information and the players are working on the right part of the game, the player will improve, the player will stay in our sport, the player won't be so upset when they lose points, because we know, the number one player in the world only wins 55% of their points.
Mhm.
Um, the back of the court is tough, the front of the court is good, but certainly we need proficiency up there. But if I can help arm coaches with the analytics that will help their players not only become better, but to change their paradigm of what they think tennis is, then I'm doing my job.
Yeah. And so it's Monday, second week of the US Open. The juniors are starting. There's a lot of coaches out there again at the top of Division 1 recruiting. But if you were to become a college coach tomorrow, Craig, and you were recruiting players, identifying talent, and just with the naked eye, with no analytics to look at, what would be some things you'd be looking at within that player's game and to recognize or to determine how much upside they have in their game? Like, we all want to recruit the best players for sure, but then it's okay. If I can't get the very best players who have proven themselves time and time again, I need to find the player who has the most runway to improve here over the next few years. What would be some of those things you'd be looking at that player?
In my mind, I think two things, but there's probably more than two. The first thing I'm going to look at is their face when they lose a point. I'm
Mm,
going to look to see how they handle adversity. I'm going to look to see whether they're panicking. Are they looking at their coach? Are they, the classic is the arms go out. I'm a victim. As soon as the arms go out, it's like, you're in some kind of sophisticated tank mode from there on, where you're either blasting and they're not going to go in, or you're pushing, or
mm,
you're too mad, you're too upset. So I'm looking for a player that is not going to lose their marbles when push comes to shove in a match, when adversity comes, when the match is on the line. So I'm going to be absolutely looking at body language, number one. Secondly, I pray that their junior coach has done their job and made all of their strokes, particularly the serve, simple,
mm,
clean, repeatable, injury free.
mm,
Our job coaching 8 to 12-year-olds is to make the strokes simple. You see so many players out here that they're competing and they love it, and that they want to be so good, whether it's college tennis or whether it's pro tennis, but their technique
mm,
is abysmal.
mm,
Whether it's a serve, whether it's just, something going weird and wacky in the backswing on the serve, something opening on a forehand, something dropping on a backhand, and it's like, oh my goodness, because these things, you can survive with these problems when you have time.
mhm,
But when you don't have time, when you're rushed, that's when they break down. So I'm looking for, like, okay, I don't have to spend a year or two fixing that forehand. I don't have to, go to surgery. It's like, oh my God, I got to get the scalpel out on this backhand. The technique is awful. And there's guys here, top 10, top 20, top 30. There's players, men and women in the US Open, that still have huge problems with their technique, that
mhm.
forces them to break down under pressure, that forces them to lose matches, lose matches. So, I walked by an Australian kid yesterday. I was watching actually a doubles match, a main draw doubles match. And there was an Aussie kid over the back playing, and I didn't even know who he was. I just looked at him, but I saw him hit one serve, I saw him hit one forehand, I saw him hit one backhand, and everything was clean. I'm like, yes. I saw him hit three shots, and I was the happiest coach on the planet, because it was all so simple. And I'm like, this kid can develop into something,
Mm.
because the technique's simple, the technique's good.
Yeah, love that. And then again, Craig, put yourself in the shoes of a college coach. You're about to start your fall season now. You want your team to be improving throughout the fall and be their very best come January for the dual match season. What are some things that you're maybe focusing on this fall with the team in general? Not obviously there's individual work that would be done, but where would be your areas of focus so a team is playing their best come January 20th?
I'm going to answer it in a roundabout way. When I moved to Austin in 2013 from Dallas, I was living in Dallas for 10 years, ran the junior program at T-Bar-M there, coached a bunch on the tours, so I was in and out a little bit. But I moved to Austin in 2013 and took over running a academy, a pre-existing academy. So the first thing I did was upstairs in the, what the players were typically used to doing. They were the juniors. They would arrive at the court. They put their bags down on the side of the court. They'd run their laps, and then they'd just go and hit. They'd just go and hit. And then they would come in, and there would be a little bit of instruction, and that was just a lot of hitting. Guys, forehands cross court for 20 minutes. Away you go. So there's a little bit of mad scientist in me. There's a little bit of like, well, I wonder if we did this, what would happen? If we did that, what would happen? Can you teach pro patterns of play to a 12-year-old? I don't know. Let me try. Can you coach 30 kids with one coach? I don't know. Let me try. We're doing a tennis center. I've got 52 courts. I've got 24 grass courts in a row. Can we all do can I bring them in? Can I sit them on the ground? Can I explain the drill? Can I do a demonstration of the drill? And then I walk around because everyone's doing the same drill. I don't know. Let me try. So anyway, I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but the first thing we did is we went upstairs and I created a room that had a big screen TV. It had a whiteboard. And because I'd moved to Austin, I had all these spare pieces of big butcher paper, just big square pieces. And early one time there, it was raining. So we had all these principles, 0 through 4 is 70%, 5 through 8 is 20%, 10, 9 plus is 10%. The forehand is the sword, the backhand is the shield, these kind of things. So what we started doing, the first thing we'd do is I'd bring the kids to the room. We wouldn't go to the court. And I would either on the TV, I would show video of what we're working on. It could have been forehand defense out wide. So I get 4, 5, 6 points, 10 points of any pro player, male or female, running wide and then going cross court with that forehand, 8 or 8. And then I'd say to the players, so our theory is defense goes cross. So one day it's raining and I've got all this butcher paper. I'm like, hang on a second. So I went, actually a couple of days before that, we went and bought just big texters or markers. We bought markers. So I sit down with the players with these Sharpies and markers. It's raining outside, so we can't play. And I'm like, okay, I want you to get very colorful. I want you to be very artistic. And all of the principles we have, you're going to draw on these pieces of paper, then we're going to hang them on the wall. We're going to press them to the wall, pin them to the wall. So we've got a 0 through 4, we've got the sword and the shield. All of a sudden we've got 30 different things up on the wall. So what was happening, we'd not only meet in that room and say, okay, we're working on serve direction, working on side serves out wide. I would show it. I would go to the drawing board. I would draw it. I would draw the shape. And I would go, okay, now look up on the wall. Can you see any elements of that we've drawn that relate to our practice today? So we had, a service box, the 8 serve locations. We had 1 through 8 marked there. When I was working with players, I tell them, you don't hit the slice serve and the juice is kind of, you hit it at a slower speed, like 75%. So they go, we have the 75% slider picture over there. We have the 8 serve locations over here. We have it's also going to come back as a serve +1. So we have that. So pretty soon, all of these kids in the academy intimately knew all of the principles that I was coaching, because we now had developed after a couple of months to about 80 of these pictures up on the wall. And it was so much easier for me to implement a pattern of play or a theory because they've physically drawn it. And sometimes they're funny, sometimes they look horrible, sometimes we make fun of them all the time, but that's part of it. So what I would encourage a college coach to do before they start practice in the fall is to become very clear with the players what they're practicing, whether it's a pattern, whether we're feeding,
Mhm.
whether we're working on short balls. One of them I call the Undertaker. Now, the Undertaker happens to be a wrestler, a former wrestler who lives in Austin. His kids go to school with my kids. So, one of the
I
kids
remember
is really
him.
good. Drew this picture of a wrestling ring with the Undertaker in it. But the Undertaker represents a short ball that's low, particularly in the middle of the court. So the ball's under, we extrapolate out, but we've got a picture for that. And we know that we need triple spin. So next to the Undertaker, we have 3x, which means whatever spin you normally hit, we need triple that spin to get that ball up and down. I helped Gabriel Diallo here, who's a former Kentucky player.
Yeah.
He played Tommy Paul. He lost in 4 sets. Gabriel needs work on the Undertaker. There were so many times where Gabriel would serve to Tommy's forehand. Tommy would chip the return like an absolute pro, like unbelievable chip returns, but it would go short to Gabriel, and he's inviting him in, but he's inviting him in on Tommy's terms. So Gabriel was not good with the Undertaker. He made so many errors in the court. He didn't have enough racket head speed. He wasn't getting down. He just also didn't know where to hit it. One option is going straight down the middle of the court rather than hitting to a corner that you can't hit a winner and giving Tommy an angle.
Mm.
So that's what I would do. I would get very specific. I would have the players, learning and writing and communicating with each other on here's the things that we stand for as a team. Here's the strategies that mean the most, and would hold ourselves accountable to hit as many serves as possible, to hit as many returns as possible, not only just to go out there and rally, but, the spring, the coach is going to look at their player and go, I wish they had this serve and short ball combo. Well, you've got the fall to work on that, work on specific patterns.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome stuff. So, Craig, obviously you've done a lot of work with college programs through the years, a couple of programs that I coached as well, and your insights, I mean, is so invaluable to our coaching staffs, but also then the players as well, to hear directly from you, because I think sometimes the players can get tired with the coach's voice, and to hear somebody else share similar information but just in a different voice, a different tone, different stories around it, can be super helpful. But you've spent a lot of the last few years working on the pro side, but you're starting to work again with college programs. Can you share a little bit about the work you're doing now, and then how coaches can contact you, or if they're interested in working with you?
Sure. It's called Match IQ. So once again, it's all about competing. It's all about the match. It's all about patterns. When COVID hit, I started doing a lot of Zoom lessons, and I started doing a lot of webinars, because what else can you do? You can't go out on the court. So those have ramped up since COVID, and they go very well. The ability to coach somebody, like, again, it was the mad scientist. Like, I don't know how much I can really coach over a Zoom call. The answer is a lot. The answer is you can make a substantial difference over Zoom. So the webinars also go extremely well. And so I looked at it, and I've started, working back with some college coaches that I know, and having, some players and delivering that message over Zoom. So I thought, it's the right time of year. I'm in the summer, coming to the fall. The fall is an opportunity for the college coaches to work on the game for the spring. So I launched Match IQ also for the Pro Tour. It's a little bit different for the Pro Tour than college, but the aim is I'm packaging together Zoom lessons. So it's a package of 10 lessons. The coach, it's very customizable. The coach can say, Craig, I want most of these with me. I want you to help me understand. I want you to help me organize the practice court. I want you to help me in these specific ways. There's, as part of it, there's a lot of the mental and emotional component. A lot of players I talked in college tennis get really nervous before matches. I certainly did. So there's certain webinars that I can tap into and talk to the team over Zoom as well about the mental and the emotional side. Essentially, the college coach has I work with him or her to discuss and customize what they want out of those lessons. So you can purchase a package of 10 that you'll do in the fall, a package of 10 in the spring, and a package of 10 over the summer. If if you want more, we can talk about that. If you want to spread it out further, we can talk about that as well. But it's the ability to get my knowledge and my understanding of the game and share it directly with the coach and directly with the team. So that's what it's called. It's Match IQ. It's on my website. I love to connect with the coaches and love to talk to them about it. But I think the big key is, some programs will be more heavy on, hey, we want to be better in the first four shots. Some would be like, my players are not consistent enough. Other is, we've got a bunch of players that get too mad, too angry, too upset. They can't handle themselves. Let's structure that program around them. So the college level, when you look at kind of juniors and college players in the pro level, there is a lot in college tennis. Is like they're not that far away from the pro tour. In some ways they are, but in other ways they're not. In a lot of ways they hit such a good ball, but where it goes, why it goes there, when it goes there, and as part of Match IQ, we study a lot of the pros. We study a lot of the patterns. We show this was the right shot selection. So yeah, I greatly enjoy working with college programs and really look forward to reconnecting with them with Match IQ now starting in the fall.
Yeah. And Craig, remind us, what's your website again? What's the address?
BrainGameTennis.com is my website. There'll be, actually, I'm making it, there's 53 webinars. By the end of this week, there'll be 60 that'll be on there. I'll do those other 7 here in the coming weeks. There's 11 courses and essentially 60 webinars and a ton of information in the blog as well. So yeah, that's where it's at.
So you finally got the .com. I think it used to be .net, was it? Am I right?
It was thebraingame.net. It
Okay.
was for a while, and I changed it to braingametennis.com. I think that was a step in the right direction.
All right. You got the domain finally. Hopefully you didn't have to pay too much for it. All right. Some rapid fire questions here, Craig. Who's going to win the US Open and why on both the men's and women's side?
I think Sinner on the men. I think, losing Djokovic, losing Alcaraz. I think his pathway forward. I've got the draw right here. He's got Tommy Paul now. I'm so impressed with Tommy Paul the other day, but I think he gets through that one. The courts are playing faster. He would have Medvedev in the semi. I think he gets through that one. And then on the other side, in the final, you got Fritz, Zverev, Dimitrov, and Tiafoe. You'd probably take Zverev to make that final there, but I've got Sinner. Viva Italia.
Okay, you got
Oh, in the women, sorry, for the women, let me just pull that up here. So Swiatek, I don't think she gets it done. On the top, Paolini's there. On the bottom, Sabalenka. I think the courts are perfect for her. She's going to be able to hit through people. The court's going to go quick. I got Sabalenka in the women.
Okay. Who is the best former collegian on tour right now from a tactical perspective? Who's winning? Like you said earlier, you would win matches that you weren't supposed to win just from because you figured out tactically how to win those matches. Is there a collegian that you feel like is winning more matches than they probably should be?
You know what? I'm going to just sneak back a little bit in time. And a player that I worked with, but I thought that really matured tactically was Kevin Anderson.
Okay.
He made a final here. I know he's retired now, but Kevin, when I first started working with him, didn't know which way was up. I famously joked with him. He played Bobby Reynolds in a challenger in like 2009. Bobby had been out. Bobby played at Vanderbilt. Bobby was out with wrist or elbow problem for 6 months. He comes back to the Dallas Challenger. They play in the first round. Kevin had just lost Andy Murray, I think 2-3-1 at the Aussie Open. Somehow Kevin loses that match in 3 sets, a tiebreaker in the third. I had breakfast with Kevin the next morning. I'm like, tell us about the match. And he just was, I know this is rapid fire, so I'm going to wind this up quickly. But you just didn't know who he was. He wasn't on there. I said, Kevin, you're 6'9" from South Africa, playing tennis like you're 5'9" from Bolivia. But by the end of his career, he was coming forward. He knew who he was as a player. So I think Kevin really matured well there.
And is there a player that you've been studying here over the last few months, a young player on tour, maybe top 100 or in and around that area, that you're like, wow, this player's going to be the real deal here in the next couple of years? There's some of
Well,
that.
let's stick. Well, let's take, yeah. Alexei Popper. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Again, I have history working with him over a period of time before and after COVID. When I was working with him, players go through stages, and the stage I had was the racket wasn't good, the attitude wasn't as good as it is now. The forehand didn't have the racket head speed. The backhand was a liability. The net, every time he went in, he drop shotted. There was problems. He was still 80 in the world, but there was holes everywhere. And you look at him today, especially against Novak, it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
congratulations on cleaning literally everything up in your game. It took a year and a half, 2 years, but I'm so impressed with particularly the Novak match against TFO last night. It's a different deal. All of a sudden, it's like now I'm in the fourth round. I've never been there. I've got a guy that's an American. I'm instead of me having all the swagger on the court, it's this guy. Alexei didn't play his best last night, but still had chances. So Alexei, but also I also work with assisting Marty Laurendale with Gabriel Diallo. And there's where I see Gabriel in a year and a half is where I see exactly like Lexi. Gabriel's already now broken in the top 100, but there's things that need improving in his game. And I think he'll do it. And I think he's going to be in 2 years' time. I think look out, world, he's coming.
Awesome. We love to hear that about former collegians. So keep it
Absolutely.
coming. Yeah, yeah. Well, Craig, this has been a pleasure. It always is working with you. Thank you for all your contributions to college tennis through the decades, coming to our ITA coaches conference on so many years. And I know our coaches love to see you there. Hopefully we'll have you back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But and also thank you for the work you did with the programs I coached. You really did make a difference. So I'm glad to hear you're back helping college programs again. But any last words of wisdom for the coaches?
I mean, coaches need to know I played college tennis. My freshman year, I went from Australia, I played at Oral Roberts University. I played five. Not really the place for me. Transferred to Saddleback Junior College in Southern Cal. Won Ojai doubles, junior college. Was ranked #1 in Southern Cal and 2 in the state. And I loved it. I loved my junior college days. Then I played at Baylor. I played one at Baylor. We were not good. We were the bad news bears when I played there. They're much better now. But, I know what college tennis is like. I know the benefits. I love it. I'm always going to be steering players from all over the world, great juniors into college tennis. I'm a huge believer. It's the most fun I've ever had playing college tennis and enjoying the US college system. So I'm one of you guys, and I steer as many people that way as I can, and I love to support you. So that's my history there.
Right. Thank you, Craig.